Thanks everybody for sticking around until the end of the show, almost. My name is Todd Tauber. I'm with a company called Degreed. This is Tom Rinkowski from Intel. We'll get to Tom's intro in just a minute. Just quick show of hands, is anybody familiar with Degreed? So, 10-second commercial. Degreed connects all of your learning and development resources, content systems, and people so that they can work together, meaning you can personalize it, curate it, track it, all in one system, wherever it lives. So Tim will introduce himself in just a second. We wanted to talk about 4 things today. Number 1, how Intel is starting to rethink its approach to learning and development for its workforce, and why, and what that means for Tom and his team. Secondly, how Intel is thinking differently about its learning strategy, focusing specifically on the needs of its workers, above the needs of the organization. Thirdly, how Intel is redesigning its organization, its learning organization, to innovate, not just to execute. And then lastly, how they're rewiring their technology infrastructure to make some new things possible that weren't possible before. So the sort of starting point for me in asking Tom to tell his story is Intel CEO made this statement in a newspaper in America 6 months ago. And what he was telling employees is they're not in an environment anymore where they can just train once in a while. Learning has to be an everyday part of their jobs, part of how they work. So, Tom, Intel is going through this transformation, turning itself from a PC-dependent company into one that's focused on connecting all kinds of devices. Maybe we can start with just a quick intro of yourself, but also I'd love to hear you tell the audience, what does that mean for how you and Tim and the rest of your team are thinking about how you do your jobs?
Every year we spend billions of dollars in our research and development to scale down to what is now a grain of rice microprocessor with millions of transistors on and in each of your devices. We've done that for over 40 years now, so we're kind of the granddad of technology world, where you see things rapidly swallowing and being consumed. We've actually stayed the course, and it's because of our investment in research and development that we've been able to progress and drive the market to processors now that are on handheld devices, larger scale PCs, etc. So as that journey, that 40-year journey has progressed, we've been learning. Our engineers across the world of the total company size of 100,000, almost half of which are all engineers, they've had to learn, and they've had to spend time learning every day. And what we've noticed in the last couple of years as we've studied our environment, we've got a centralized legacy learning management system. We have a number of pockets of custom portals that have been designed to service different divisions of the company to help them learn. You can imagine there's a portal to help the sales guys learn, there's a portal to help the finance team learn competencies and scale. So that's created a cacophony of different websites, different experiences that the learners have to go through. And so, yeah, we recognize we need to change, as always. That's the nature of our company, to innovate, and learning's no different. So.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
So we're going to save some time at the end for a Q&A, but I want to move on to how you guys are thinking about your learning strategy these days. This is something that your team leader, Tim, told us. His mindset, what he's trying to do in terms of the strategy for learning at Intel, is to complement or compete with Google, because that is, for many people at Intel, the learning experience. I thought that was a really interesting and powerful comment. When we've done these kind of talks in the past, I think that's a very different way of thinking about the role of the learning organization. And so it's obviously essential that learning is lined up with the needs and the priorities of the organization. So what that means typically with strategy is that CLOs will typically listen to the business executives, focus on the organizational priorities, and organizational priorities specifically usually driven by operating efficiency and scale and standardization. But you guys are focusing first on your workers and literally talking about and thinking about them as consumers. So how do you reconcile those two things? How do you connect your workers as consumers to what your executives expect in terms of business results?
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Yeah, so as we looked at the whole challenge and we're looking at how employees work, you can see that what we've noticed in our studies is that many of them are spending time searching outside of our network for learning and the latest learning and innovation. We've had to reorientate from a model where we have divisions which are tailored to targeting and deploying corporate learning and laying on learning to our different employees, to thinking about the employees actually as customers, as Todd mentioned, putting them as a customer at the center of the discussion. And that reorientation, that shift, that changed our whole mindset about how we approach them. It made us assess how good their experience is when they're doing their day-to-day jobs. You know, when we ask them very simple questions about, how did you learn today? What's it going to take if you want to learn about such and such topic? And the results that we found were that they were going outside of our normal channels, or what we thought was normal. And so in a way, we weren't servicing our customers, which is what we need to do. When you have a learning domain organization looking to educate people, you have to be on top of how they're learning on a day-to-day basis. So that's again, that shift, that step that we had to make and keep them at the center. And it's a mindset, it's a change, but when you keep the employee at the center of the conversation, it helps in all of your other decisions. All of the other decisions when you're looking at technologies or process or even hiring other people, having that mindset influences the way that you make a decision and gets you to, ultimately, it should be a good one that's for the employee, essentially your customer.
So that's a different set of priorities, and I get why. Can you talk a little bit about, how does that change your thinking in terms of, and your priorities in terms of the requirements for the learning environment at Intel? What does the future look like? What are you guys trying to create?
Yeah, so I guess we've recognized that we can't just have one big system to solve it, or one big ring for the Lord of the Rings fans out there to fix everything. There's so many new software solutions out there that we've recognized that are able to meet the need and be the cutting edge technology that can match what the employee is searching for. So we began to assess and build on the concept of an ecosystem. We might talk about that in a bit more detail later, but the fact that we want to pick the best of breed for our customers, our employees, that's the new strategy that we have, instead of kind of building out on one big central solution.
And are there any particular requirements that you guys are thinking about differently in terms of the technology, the tools, things that you wouldn't have necessarily prioritized in the past?
Yeah, so from a tools perspective, we looked at, and what's mentioned in that quote previously, what Tim mentioned, it has to be something that you can search and find easily. When you look at the employee as a customer, your number one job is to get them to learn quickly and easily, and keep it simple. The technology, the processes also have to match that same mindset, because you want to make learning easy, and so making learning easier at Intel is the key concept.
Okay. So that all suggests that you and your team are trying to work differently, right? You're trying to, I saw Jane Hart walking around yesterday, she has this quote saying, doing different things and doing things differently. What is the current process, and what's changing for how you guys think about delivering learning to the workforce?
So one of the things we've recognized, as I mentioned earlier, we have these custom portals that are dedicated at finance or sales and different divisions within the company. We recognize that there's actually another behavior as we started talking to our employees, our customers. We recognize that there's actually a strong element of learning that's occurring at the peer-to-peer level. So in order to match and to find out how they're learning with each other at a team level, rather than turning up in a classroom and learning, we've been spending time to help them navigate and connect with each other. So we're looking for technologies that help that, make that easier, and make that connection happen. It's not just about our corporate structures, there's also an engineering and also finance and any other divisions. There's a set of learning that's happening that we couldn't find, and we call it informal learning. And that's what we're looking for, to tap into and help the employees with tools that can help them in that informal learning. that's generally a lot of learning happens today.
So again, Tim was talking to us about how some of the roles are changing along with the processes.
Yep.
Trying to do different things requires either different people or people to do different things than they used to. You haven't really talked about, what I haven't heard you say is designing and delivering training, right? You guys are still doing that, but how is that changing and evolving? You were telling me how you guys were building MOOCs earlier. What are some of the jobs that are changing and how are those things evolving for you guys?
Yeah, so thanks, took a question. There's different divisions who have different people responsible for the training programs, our learning domain managers. And instead of perhaps looking out and buying different courses and plugging them into our employee curriculum, what we're looking for them to do is to start to call curating content from different sources. And it comes right down to micro-learning, through to heavier or video clips or courses themselves. But it's that transition, that step away from modular big courses that we would take our engineers through to more micro level learning that would occur, that our own learning domain managers now have to become curation engineers or curation specialists. They can pick the best content that's available on the internet and within our internal systems that are being developed and stitch together a pathway or a curriculum for the employees they can easily digest. All engineers, just as your guys, are going to be incredibly busy. So to make it bite-sized, make it consumable, these learning domain managers that we work with now have to start to look at spending time making things more digestible and breaking things down.
So your title, I don't want to go all the way back to the title slide, but your title is Experience Manager. This is not a traditional learning department title.
No.
Can you tell everybody a little bit about what you do and what your focus is, how you spend your time?
Yeah, so I spend my time. I spend time assessing different software solutions that deliver those experiences. Also look at in-classroom experiences and how we can combine different types of what is a 3-tier system: classroom learning, virtual learning, and web-based training, essentially. So yeah, we break down, and right from the beginning, when someone's looking for something to learn about, to the point of delivery, I have to, in my role, assess how it's going to work end to end for that client or that customer so that they're happy and they've learned what they need to on the job.
So what you're describing are all things that are either new or at the very best uncomfortable for a lot of people who were educated, trained, recruited, organized, mobilized, rewarded for 10, 20 years to be instructional designers, developers, trainers. How are you getting everybody else on board with this change? Because this is really the hard part, right?
Yeah, so it's happening to all of us now, and even the people, is the way that we are consuming and learning has changed. We have devices at home now, and the lines between home and work are changing as well. So it's uncovering that and demonstrating to our different learning domain managers and our employees and saying, yes, you've got a consumer, but in some ways it's kind of easy as well, because they've got a consumer experience at home, and it's buying something on Amazon, and it's incredibly easy to do that. Whereas you come into the workplace and all of a sudden it's like uncomfortable to click through a web-based training and sit there kind of going through, and you know that there's a better way of doing it because you can see how it's operating in the consumer place. So we're trying to match that and to bring technologies that can help match what they're experiencing at home into the workplace.
What are some of the common objections or obstacles you're running into as you go through that?
So I guess, let me think about that. There's a lot of it that's just tied down to people not wanting to change and try something different. And I guess the main thing that we've heard has been, I need to think a bit.
How do you convince them to change, right?
Yeah, we help them.
It's not comfortable.
We
Nobody
demonstrate the
likes
change, but we also spend time with them to understand what their experience is. Once we treat them as a learner, I'll ask them a simple question and say, how do you learn about Raspberry Pi, for example, a technology that we've got? And they'll walk us through their use case, and it's completely different from relying on what services we've provided as a learning organization. So in that sense, we prove it out with them, we walk them through it and show them how difficult it is to do something. If it's 9 clicks versus 1 click in another environment, for example.
Okay. So what I've heard you say is a pretty different way of approaching the strategy or the purpose and the role of the organization. Processes are starting to change, the people are starting to change. That's starting to, it sounds like, I know from our conversations, make you guys think very differently about the toolkit that you deploy to get your jobs done as well, right? Tim told us again that he wanted to stitch together the best capabilities to deliver the best possible learning experience. And I think that word stitch is really the operative word here. Every CLO wants to simplify things. You walk around this hall, everything is cleaner and simpler than it used to be, but at the same time, everything looks and sounds the same. It's all very confusing. The conventional choice is to try to find one monolithic, integrated system. You guys are making a conscious choice to rebuild everything and to integrate, instead of buying an integrated system, integrate a bunch of best-of-breed solutions. You're making it intentionally hard on yourselves. Why is that the right approach for you guys? Why? How do you make that case?
So it's about making learning easy for our employees. Our main goal is to help them learn. And as Todd's mentioned, there are lots of islands of information for them to pick from and learn from. Our learning management system is one of them, but then they have these custom portals for learning. There's also, outside in the internet, there's a whole world wide web of learning across different platforms, many of them content providers here. So we've helped give them the best of breed solutions, and we aim to give them the best that we can. So that's been our main mantra or direction, the fact that we want to give them the best experience and to make learning easy.
So when you walk around an expo hall like this one, like I said, I mean, and I heard people talking about this at lunch, a lot of the messaging on the booths, including ours, looks and sounds alike. Everything's a next-gen learning platform of some kind. How do you make sense of that sea of vendors? How do you find the ones that make sense for you guys?
We've spent time with different vendors looking at the way that the employee interacts, and it comes down to simple questions like, how would you learn about X topic? We actually trialed it out our own system first. Before looking at all the vendors, we went internally, we sat down with some of our employees and said, okay, what do you want to learn about today? And she went to our intranet homepage and she typed in a search topic and nothing came up. She said, oh, okay, we asked her then, okay, where are you going to go next? She said, okay, I'll try Google. And that was the natural spot. She went, Google, okay. And the result set came up, but it was a bit more, the topic was Raspberry Pi. So in that example, it brought up the corporate website, but it wasn't necessarily training related or learning related. So as we've looked at other vendors, search is a key element for them to be able to find exactly what the employee's looking for. So we made sure that when we've been speaking with different vendors and assessing them, they've had an element of doing things easily and finding things easily.
Great. So the last question I have for you, and then I think we've got time for some audience questions. What are some of the pitfalls and challenges that you guys have sort of stumbled upon and worked through or are starting to encounter going down this road, right? Stitching together this ecosystem versus going the integrated single system route.
Yeah, so I did that thing earlier where it looked like it was easy to change your mindset, but it's not easy to help convince your learning partners, your HR learning partners to change. It's not easy to convince your IT teams to change. You have to bring them along in the journey, and that means spending time with them to help demonstrate and show them why you're trying to do what you're doing and helping them appreciate where you're going. You can't leave them behind. And that's sometimes when you can get in trouble. You look over your shoulder and your finance team and your IT team aren't with you, or your IT person that's responsible. You have to show them and get them involved and getting them appreciate the fact that learning in this organization is hard sometimes, and we can make it better together, but it's only together that you can do it. And so we spent time working with our partners to make sure they're with us at the same time.
Sorry, I actually said that was the last question, but I have one more.
All right, yeah.
You've got to then go around and sell this to your CFO, your business executives to get the money to do all of this.
Yeah.
perfectly working order equipment, let's chuck it all and start over. How do you make the business case to these people? What was the process there?
So we generally map out, or we've mapped out exactly what's happening, and we've spent time to analyze the learner journey and also the infrastructure that supports it. So we can tell a story for what's happening for real, along with specific use cases that we have for learning and how it happens in these different organizations. But when you're able to show, and we have to show our executive teams, the fact that we've got learning happening in this way across this kind of infrastructure, we're spending money in and across these different content providers in different divisions, the case becomes a lot more compelling when they see how much and what is actually happening. But you've got to spend time and step back from the rush of a day or the rush of a week to really help paint the picture for them, because they're just like us, and what you're doing is you're helping them learn as well. In our executive, your sponsorship teams, you'll need to spend time with them to tell that story and assess it, working with any employee use case and simply writing it down.
Great. That's all the questions that I had, and I've heard most of, I think, the story that I know. Love to open it up to audience questions if anybody's got questions. We've got time for a couple. You can play Stump Tim. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Tom.
Yeah. Not like that. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
want to
so the
repeat the
gentleman
question?
asked, what does it look like for real for me and for an employee? Yeah, so right now, it's all in one place. So you can search, do a simple search, and the filtering is also a very powerful feature, because we recognize that employees aren't just looking for that one web-based certification course. They're looking for articles, they're looking for videos, and other learning-related materials. So it is, yeah, putting it all in one place, and then all of the content sources are located in different places, but they're all available and accessible through one place, where what we didn't touch upon with Todd really was the fact that you can find it, but also you can track it and log it and return back to it and see what other people are learning about as well. I mentioned about that peer-to-peer learning. This one location as well also helps you understand what people are learning about. So if you have luminaries in your organization who are really good at learning about a specific topic and sharing it, we've all got them in our companies. People are just good at sharing. This, one of the ways in the platforms that we've been looking at is to make sure that learning is exposed and available to people if they're interested in following someone who's really good at learning about specific technology. And we've got lots of engineers like that. Yep.
So here's Tom's email if you want to pester him with questions. Yeah. Any other questions from the audience? Everybody's eager to get to happy hour, okay?
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much for making time for us at the end of the last day of the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.